There are hundreds of newsrooms in the United States. Most of them look alike. But for 26 years, the newsroom of the Washington Post has been different from all the rest. The editor who's been in charge there, setting the tone, setting the standards, intent on shaking up Washington, was Benjamin C. Bradlee.
People are always asking if I had a grand plan. I didn't have a grand plan. I mean, I wanted to make it more exciting. I wanted to make it more interesting. To the degree that it was stuffy, I wanted it to be less stuffy. But I like a nice, rowdy metropolitan paper.
He's not a philosophical man, not somebody to sit down and say, well, let's talk about the theory of scandal, or let's talk about the history of scandal. He wanted to know, what have you got?
Let me tell you that working for Bradlee also was great fun. If his attention was on you. If his attention wasn't on you, it could be hell.
Bradlee set out to hire the best reporters he could find and then drive them hard. The perfect formula, as it turned out, for covering a story that made Ben Bradlee and his reporters movie heroes. The biggest story Washington has ever seen.
You haven't got it. Get some harder information next time.
In my naive way, when I first came to this town, I didn't think presidents lied. When Nixon looked the world in the face in the television tube and said he couldn't tell us the truth about Watergate because it involved national security, you know, and that was baloney. Baloney. It was a flat-out lie. That really, the world was never quite the same for me after that.
Journalism has never been quite the same either. Reporters who once counted themselves lucky if they could pay the mortgage suddenly became rich and famous.
My generation of reporters was brought up to stay off the stage, to stay in the audience, don't be part of the event. And that's awfully hard now.
Young Bradlee might as well have been on the stage. Son of a wealthy Boston financier, graduate of private schools, including Harvard, World War II naval officer, he fit the part of the dashing, debonair foreign correspondent, covering Europe for Newsweek out of Paris. He was hard-driving, hard-drinking, the picture of elegance and sophisticated wickedness.
A lot of people say that you also try to create this badass image, this debonair, bon voyant.
It's bon vivant, Sam.
Bon vivant? Oh, well, you can't help admiring a reporter who knows such things. Or who transferred back to Washington in 1957, could live in Georgetown and become fast friends with his neighbor, John F. Kennedy. And when his neighbor went on to become president, they remained close, much to the envy of other reporters. But even such a friendship had its limits.
Ben, did you know that Jack Kennedy was having affairs?
I did not know that. I know you're not going to believe this, and people generally don't. I had heard rumors that he had had affairs, certainly. The times I saw him were almost always with his wife and my wife. And that is a milieu in which the subject of adultery does not come up frequently or easily.
If you had known, would you have printed it?
Sure, I think so. If I had known about sharing the girlfriend with a mistress of the gangster.
Judith Campbell was the mistress. Sam Giancana, the infamous boss of the Chicago Mafia, the gangster. Years later, when Bradlee found out, he was outraged.
I think it's reckless. I think it's a betrayal of the people who believed in him. And I believe that if that had happened today, that he could not have survived that.
But if Ben and Jack were once a pair, the real twosome in Bradlee's career were Ben and Catherine. Catherine Graham, the owner of the Washington Post, a widow struggling to run a newspaper, and who wanted it to be better than it was.
You really fought to become the editor of that paper.
I was the bureau chief of Newsweek at that time, and she invited me to a lunch, a career lunch. She asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, and then she said, would I be interested ever in coming back to the Post? And I said that I would.
Well, you said more than that. Come clean, Bradlee.
I said I'd give my left one for it.
What did she say to that?
I think she noted that.
Bradlee was hired in 1965, and things began to change. The paper began to take chances, began to challenge powerful interests, and in 1972 began an investigation that was to rock the political foundation of this country. That summer, two young reporters, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, were assigned to cover a burglary at the Democratic Party national headquarters, which was then located in an office building named Watergate.
It would have been a perfectly routine case had it not had these several interesting features, like the rubber gloves, like the crisp $100 bills in the pockets of these five Cuban Americans, and especially the notebooks in one of their pockets that had all the White House telephone numbers.
Did you say to these guys, okay, charge on this, we've got something here?
We all said, what in hell is that all about?
For a long time, the Post was out there alone, with everybody else just tagging along.
The Washington Post reported today.
The Washington Post reported that while
The Washington Post says
Yes, everybody.
The Washington Post also claims that
The Nixon White House fought back.
I don't respect the type of journalism, the shabby journalism that is being practiced by the Washington Post.
The Nixon administration began to react finally with great ferocity.
Yeah.
And with threats.
Yeah.
Didn't you worry?
Yep.
Bradlee may have been worried, but to his reporters, he was steady as a rock.
He kept us on the story because, as you know, there were people at the Washington Post, particularly more senior national reporters and editors, who wanted us off of the story.
And when we got savaged by the White House, by everyone in the Nixon establishment, by everyone in the Republican establishment, Bradlee put out the little line, we stand by the boys, we stand by the story, and he meant it.
Bradlee stuck with them even when their secret source, known as Deep Throat, insisted on total anonymity.
just follow the money. Garage freak. Says, what kind of a crazy story is this?
There he was on the screen, played by the actor Jason Robards, but it was him.
There's nothing in my education that prepared me for seeing somebody up there on the screen with the name of Bradlee and using all those dirty words and.
Bradlee, you hypocrite. You use dirty words and you know it.
Practically never. Practically never. Only under terrible pressure.
The real pressure in Watergate, of course, was on the White House and the Nixon aides who were in on the burglary and its cover-up. Many of them ultimately went to jail because the Post had refused to let the story die. And the president himself paid a terrible price.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Ben, who is Deep Throat?
I'm not going to tell you.
You know?
Yes.
Is it one person?
I'm just not going to answer you.
Will we ever know?
Probably.
How, if you're not going to say, and Woodward's not going to say, and Bernstein's not going to say? You think Deep Throat will eventually say?
No, but I think Deep Throat will eventually die. And I think that at that moment you might know.
Is there an agreement that when he or she dies?
We've talked about this enough, Sam.
In other words, move on.
Move on.
Moving on for Bradlee was not always smooth and easy. He had his moments of agony. In 1980, the Post published a gripping story by reporter Janet Cook about an 8-year-old heroin addict named Jimmy, a story for which it won a Pulitzer Prize. There was just one problem.
Janet Cook made it up.
That's a fact.
How come you didn't know?
Well, I got news for you. If somebody wants to betray his or her organization, they can do it.
When the Post uncovered the fraud, it informed the Pulitzer Committee and returned the prize, and apologized to its readers.
How did you feel when the moment came that you realized that you'd been duped and that you'd accepted a prize which you didn't deserve?
Well, I felt like I had a dagger in my heart. I mean, there's nothing more important to a newspaper and a newspaper person than the credibility.
This matter of credibility is at the heart of Bradlee's feeling about the news business, and it is also at the heart of his feeling about people, no matter how powerful they are. Listen to him talk about President Bush.
I hiccup when he says that the Supreme Court appointment had nothing to do with race. I find that awfully hard to believe.
That's not true, is it?
No.
Why do you say it then? Why do politicians say that?
I don't know. Why people lie, why people are scared of the truth. That is, after all these years, I don't have an answer to that.
Now, you just used a word that this town shrinks from. Lie.
Well, I don't shrink from it.
In other words, George Bush lied.
He sure did.
Tough talk. But doesn't the social seductiveness of the Washington party circuit get in the way of tough reporting? Bradlee says not.
You invite me to your house, and you have a bunch of people there who are prominent in the government, and I sit next to one of them, Colin Powell, his wife Alma. Terrific people, do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
I like him.
So do I.
Well, then how do we cover him dispassionately the next day?
He comes to your house and my house knowing that what the rules are.
What are the rules?
The rules are you better watch out what you say. And never mind, this is off the record, that or off the record.
They won't feel betrayed because they'd come and they enjoyed an evening and you told them what a nice fellow they was, and the next morning, pow.
They won't tell you anything that is betrayable.
If they're smart.
If they're smart. And Colin Powell is smart.
And if they're not smart, what? They deserve...
They won't last in this town.
And they deserve not to last?
I think probably that's fair, yeah.
Bradlee has lasted as long as anyone in Washington. Now, at 70, at the top of his career, when he's still on his game, it's over.
How do you feel about retirement?
I feel terrific about it. I really do. I am excited by it. I have had 26 years of it. The place is chock-a-block full of able... You're looking at me like you don't believe this.
I don't.
Oh, wait a minute.
There's only one job that's as important as yours, the one you're giving up.
But I've done it. I've done it.
But the power,
And I've
Ben.
done it. But what's the power? I got a nice house. I got a wonderful family. I've got a couple of bucks. And I've got a really interesting bunch of jobs ahead of me.
Somebody said, what will you do if if a really hot story breaks? And Ben said, I'm going to die.
Sally Quinn, the Post's one-time star reporter turned novelist, became Bradlee's third wife 12 years ago. Before that, they lived together. Scandalous in some quarters.
Your romance of Sally caused quite a stir in the Post newsroom.
Tell me about it.
No, you tell me about it.
Sally's and my romance started after she left the Washington Post to go to work for CBS. You don't believe that either, but it's a fact.
There are some things I don't question.
Okay, that is a fact.
Not publicly.
The gossips have stopped talking now. The Bradlees are a popular couple who spend lots of time with 9-year-old Quinn, their son, who was born when Bradlee was 60.
But there you were, about 60.
Yeah.
A lot of men would have said, Sal, old gal, I love you, but I ain't going around again.
Well, not old Ben. There ain't no quitting me.
You bet. Bradlee may have lost the power. He'll now read the Post in the morning just like the rest of Washington, not edit it. But one suspects he'll never lose the zest.
What would you like to have your epitaph say?
I think the best epitaph would be Benjamin C. Bradlee, 1921-2021. Why not go for an even 100?